Whether you're a frequent flyer or a novice traveler, there is a lot to be learned about what goes on behind the scenes at the airport and in the air. Flight attendants are there to explain the proper safety procedures and provide you with free snacks and beverages, so you'd better treat them with respect. There are certain things that can make your time spent flying easier and safer, and we'll let you in on a few of them. We'll also be testing your knowledge at some point in the video, so keep an eye out for our quiz question later on. Unlike actual flying, we won't make you take off your shoes before you get to the good part. However, we do ask that you subscribe and join our notification squad. The problem with first class. Maybe you splurged on a first-class ticket to score some extra legroom and get the privilege of sitting on the plane before everyone else. Well, it turns out that in the event of an emergency, first class is the last place you want to be. Research shows that if the unthinkable happens and your plane goes down, passengers in first class have the lowest chance of survival by a wide margin. In 2012, scientists crashed a Boeing 737 on purpose and found that the crash test dummy sitting in the first class section would not have survived the crash. The cockpit of the plane was ripped away from the rest of the cabin, and the first-class seats were so mangled that some were even found over 500 feet from the crash site. If you're concerned with your safety, the safest seats are those in the middle of the cabin and near the back of the plane. Being in the exit row also helps your chances, since if the plane should catch on fire, you'll only have about 90 seconds in which to exit the plane. Near the wings of the plane is also a great choice if you're worried about your odds of survival in the event of a crash. Unseen safety measures. While there are things that you can do in order to improve your in-flight safety, the crew is looking out for you more than you are aware of. During takeoff, you may notice that the cabin lights are dimmed, but have you ever stopped to wonder why that is? Before you flick on your personal light in order to read your magazine, you should know that the lights are dimmed in order to give your eyes time to adjust to the dark, just in case something goes wrong and you need to find your way out. You are also required to put up your tray tables so they don't block anyone's ability to leave the plane quickly. Although it may let in a little light, you actually want to make sure you keep your window shade open during this time so firefighters can see you clearly in case of an emergency. Takeoff and landing are the most dangerous parts of a flight, so they're also when you should be the most vigilant. Avoid wearing synthetic fibers, which can melt during a fire. And if you have to make a hasty exit and slide down one of the large rubber slides, you might want to make sure that you're not wearing a skirt or a dress in case your skin sticks to the slide. Germs. Even if you're not a germaphobe, you should know that there are a lot of potential health hazards lurking on an airplane. They may look pretty clean, but there can be hazardous, vacation-ruining bacteria lurking where you least expect it. Due to time constraints and a lack of regulations, planes aren't cleaned as often or as thoroughly as most of us would prefer. One former flight attendant from Southwest Airlines confessed that the blankets and pillows provided were just refolded and refluffed after the first flight of the day. Meaning you could be resting your head on a pillow that someone else was drooling on just a few hours ago. The tray tables are also cleaned only once per day at most, and you'd be shocked at some of the things people rest on them, including dirty diapers. Be careful reaching into the seat pocket in front of you as well, as it's a favorite place of bacteria, including the superbug MRSA, which can survive up to 168 hours there. E. coli, however, prefers to spend up to 96 hours relaxing on your armrest. The pilot could be asleep. We're impressed that our pilots are able to control a massive aircraft and get us safely to our destination, so we try not to ask a lot of them. But not sleeping while piloting a plane is a bigger task than you might think. In a survey given to pilots working in the UK, Norway, and Sweden, between 43 and 54% of pilots admit that they've fallen asleep while flying a plane before. On long flights, pilots have assigned rest periods while the co-pilot takes over, but about half of all pilots report nodding off involuntarily at some point on their journeys. And of those that admitted sleeping on the job, about a quarter of them claimed that they awoke to find their co-pilot asleep as well. The planes do have an autopilot mode, thankfully, but this is still incredibly dangerous and something you're blissfully unaware of during your flight. Pilots have extremely strenuous jobs and work long, demanding hours. In a survey of 500 commercial flights, almost half believe that once a month their ability to fly a plane is compromised due to lack of sleep. A disturbing 84% reported their ability being compromised at some point over the last 6 months. Check your safety equipment. While flight attendants do their best to check that everything is in order before your flight, they can only do so much. When they mention the life jacket under your seat in a safety demo, you're going to want to check that it's actually where it's supposed to be. There have been a shocking number of cases involving people stealing the life jackets from airplanes. It's a punishable offense as well as a morally repugnant one, but it does happen. And during that safety demo, you'll be told to fasten your oxygen mask before helping others. However, they don't tell you the reason why. In the event of cabin decompression, you only have about 15 to 20 seconds before all the oxygen is sucked out of the plane. When this happens, the lack of oxygen will cause you to experience a confused and euphoric state, during which time you might forget what you're doing. A further 15 to 20 seconds and you'll lose consciousness altogether. If you want the best chance of helping others and saving yourself, you really do need to take the safety demo warning seriously. Don't worry, the pilots are taking your safety seriously as well by conducting touch drills. They'll move their hands over the proper buttons and levers to improve their muscle memory in case of an emergency. Before we spoil your appetite with our entry on airline food, we're going to ask you a quick question about it. According to the U.S. Department of Transportation, what is the average amount that an airline spends on the in-flight meal per person? We'll tell you the answer at the end of our video. They're judging you. From the second you step onto the airplane, your flight attendant is sizing you up to evaluate what kind of passenger you'll be. Will you follow the rules, or do you intend on being needy and demanding? There are a few things you can do to ensure you stay on the good side of the person that has the power to upgrade your seating assignment or slip you an extra packet of crackers. When you put your carry-on in the overhead bin, make sure you put it all the way in instead of leaving it hanging over the edge. That just means you're pawning your job off on the flight attendant, who is not going to be impressed. And speaking of carry-on, it can be tempting to overpack in order to avoid a checked bag, but this also means you'll have to be incredibly careful not to strike other passengers with your bag. In fact, some passengers and flight attendants have actually been injured because of this. Most importantly, don't forget to pack your manners. Smile and be polite, and don't be one of those people who holds up boarding by demanding special treatment. That's the quickest way to guarantee that you won't receive it. Opt for bottled water. We fully support people giving up their wasteful bottled water habits and drinking from the tap instead, unless of course you're on an airplane. You're going to want to bring some hand sanitizer to use after your trip to the bathroom, because you won't want to go anywhere near the faucet after you hear this. When the plane stops to empty the lavatory and refill the aircraft with water, these tasks are accomplished right next to one another, and often by the same person. In fact, the Wall Street Journal ran tests on tap water from 14 different flights and found levels of bacteria that were tens or even hundreds of times over the maximum allowed by the US government. And if you opt for bottled water, make sure to skip the ice in your glass. The ice trays rarely ever get cleaned, and the flight attendants don't exactly have time to wash their hands frequently during a flight. Before they scoop out the ice, they've likely touched some credit cards, tray tables, and who knows what else. They're safer than you. Perhaps it helps the flight attendants who have to put up with rude passengers to know that they're the safest ones on the plane. If you glance to the back of the plane where their seats are, you'll notice that they're a bit different than yours. For one thing, they face in the opposite direction towards the rear of the plane. No, that's not just because they're tired of looking at a sea of cranky passengers. Rear-facing seats on a plane are significantly more safe than front-facing ones. They provide much better support for your back, neck, and head in the event of a sudden deceleration. So if it's safer, then why aren't our airplane seats facing that way? Don't the airlines care about our safety? Of course they do, but they also care about their bottom lines. In addition to the upfront cost of completely removing the seats and installing new ones, backwards-facing seats are heavier, which means that fuel consumption will be increased. In addition, the seatbelts that flight attendants have more points than the simple ones you use. These help protect them much better in situations involving extreme turbulence. The airlines just don't see the cost incentive to replace their existing seatbelts, and the more complex mechanisms would be heavier, increasing fuel costs just like rear-facing seats would. Complimentary food and beverages. When you're voraciously hungry or feeling dehydrated on a long flight, it seems like a dream come true when a flight attendant offers you a complimentary snack and drink. But any flight attendant can also tell you that you won't enjoy them as much as you would on land. Making fun of airplane food is a tired trope, but there is a reason that food and drinks just don't taste as good when you eat them on a plane. As the air pressure in the cabin drops and the humidity levels plummet, this reduces the sensitivity of your taste buds to sweet and salty food by about 30%. In addition to your partially disabled taste buds, your nose isn't able to function as well in the air either. 80% of what we perceive as taste is actually smell, and to properly take in a whiff of your meal means that you need your nasal mucus, which quickly evaporates in the dry plane environment. This makes the food twice as bland as you would perceive it if you were on solid ground. Flying with Bernie. Should the unthinkable happen and someone loses their life on a plane, what is the proper protocol when handling the remains? The flight attendants don't want to incite a panic, but there's really no ideal course of action. The standard operating procedure in such a case is to ensure that the person is buckled in securely and tuck them in with a blanket. Hopefully, this will ensure the other passengers don't notice that the crew is pulling a weekend at Bernie's. Another drawback of being in first class is that this is where the crew will generally move such passengers, because it's more discreet and less noticeable for the rest of the passengers. Some airplanes have special lockers and body bags for just these sort of occasions, but they're in the minority. And besides the unusually still person wearing sunglasses in the first class section of the plane, there might be other unexpected bodies on board, or at least parts of them. Whether it's a body being transported for burial or a cooler containing organs for a transplant, these things often end up on the same plane you're sitting on. They're loaded in with the rest of the luggage, so most passengers are none the wiser. According to the U.S. Department of Transportation, airlines spend an average of $3.62 per person on your in-flight meal. Now that we've concluded our video, feel free to move about the internet. But before you do, make sure to click that gray bell and join our frequent Video Watchers Club. And be sure to check out some other awesome videos from the richest before you take off. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.